We're back here with some more history, and we've got from the Museum of Industrial History Mr. Mike Piersa here to tell us about what we're seeing here from the top of this parking garage in South Bethlehem, PA.
So we have an excellent panoramic view that stretches from all the way across the river with the historic downtown of Bethlehem. On the north side, you'll see the steeple of the Central Moravian Church. It's in that general area that Bethlehem was founded on Christmas Eve in 1741. And then we can just barely make out the Lehigh River and the former Lehigh Valley Railroad tracks with the train going by right now. And on the left side of that would have been a former zinc mill, which was one of South Bethlehem's first industries. And then looking left to right, we start getting into the former Bethlehem Steel site. So the building that says Steel Ice Center is built on the site of the former brass foundry of Bethlehem Steel. Moving across the street is the building that was last used as the iron foundry, but before that it was the Bessemer steel mill. There was actually four converters in there that converted liquid iron into molten steel. And that building began construction in 1868, finished in 1873, and was originally 931 feet long, stretching all the way to the right, almost to the brick building beyond.
The arches, you see.
Arches were actually incorporated into that building, and that lasted until right around the turn of the century. By that time, Bessemer steelmaking had ended here. They replaced it with open hearth furnaces, which were producing much higher quality of steel. So they converted this building to a foundry. The parking lots that are in between, the structures were actually torn down and brand new buildings put in their place, which have been since destroyed. Those were machine shops. Inside the arches was a boilerplate shop. And when they were tearing the plant down, they realized that they had to keep the arches up because they were supporting utilities like back in the 1970s and 80s. So that's how those survived the first round of major demolitions here. And then they were set aside as relics in the 1990s with a lot of these other buildings by Bethlehem Steel Corporation, where they did selective demolition. That's why the machine shops are gone and parking lots were able to take their place. That's why a lot of the railroad tracks have disappeared, and instead you have roadways. But they set aside additional buildings, like the one just to the right with the Oculus. That's the carpenter and pattern shop. So it's basically a giant woodworking facility, making wooden patterns that are cast in the foundry. Could have been the iron foundry next door or a steel foundry further down. But they put the wooden patterns made in that building into a bed of sand, pull them out. The negative images would be filled with molten metal. The metal would solidify and be machined into finished parts. The building beyond that, with a red brick and peaked roof, is Central Tool Annex. That was built in 1906 as a projectile shop. So they actually had giant hammers inside there forging projectiles that would be going into artillery pieces. And the building behind it with the much more flatter roof is Central Tool, which was before that the projectile machine shop. And that was filled with machine tools for machining the projectiles that were forged in the building just before that. To the left is blast furnace row. You have blast furnaces A, B, C, D, and E, all in order from closest to farthest. This is really the third generation of furnaces on site. The same spaces were occupied in some cases as early as the 1860s with blast furnaces, but they were torn down and rebuilt. And blast furnace, I believe it's B, was torn down in the 1950s and rebuilt on the same footprint, or same center line at least, all within the span of 180 days.
Wow.
Yeah, they did something similar with blast furnace D, because it's almost an identical furnace. And there are also two smaller furnaces, F and G, that were torn down in the 1960s.
So we're talking about this site. This is the former site. We talk about the Bethlehem Steel Company, which is a post-1900 thing, but it's built on the same site as the Bethlehem Iron Company. It was not a reorganization, but rather a new company, which is why other companies like Taylor Iron and Steel are actually the second oldest running company in America. This one is not because of the way it was organized, right?
Right, so you had Bethlehem Iron Company, and before that there were some names on paper, like Saucona Iron Company, where the same people were involved. Then you had Bethlehem Iron Company, then it was reorganized into Bethlehem Steel Company, then Bethlehem Steel Corporation, and for a little while it was part of a consortium with American Shipbuilding. I gotta look up the name, make sure I say it right, because it was such a small window of time.
Right.
It's really only remembered in textbooks and history books at this point. But the thing about these blast furnaces, people call them steel stacks. Blast furnaces made iron, not steel. They're made of steel, but they made iron. Iron was taken to a different set of furnaces like the Bessemer furnaces that used to be in this building and processed into steel. You had to get the carbon content down to about 1/4% to have a product that's bendable but also strong. Cast iron, as it comes out of a blast furnace, is about 4% carbon, which is strong but brittle. So when you're building a skyscraper, you want to be strong but also flexible, so you have to lower that carbon to just the right amount. And you can also add alloying elements and make a whole variety of products. And if you stretch out further, you'll see Wind Creek Casino, the hotel tower, the casino itself in silver. Between Central Tool and the casino, you'll see this long building with the monitor roof sloping down to the side. That's number 2 machine shop. That part of the building was built in 1890, and it was the largest industrial building in the world at that time.
Wow.
That's where they machined naval armaments, because Bethlehem Steel was the only company to bid on and therefore received the contract for making both armaments and armor plate for the United States Navy in 1887. So in the early 1890s, they were in full production making those products. To the right is the the corporate office building is the first one you see. That's 13 stories tall. And then just to the right of that is the plant office building. Plant office building was built in 1942. The floors you see were added in 1947. Corporate office building was built in stages between 1906 and the 1950s. And the roof line we see just below those buildings and between us and the flagpole is the National Museum of Industrial History, built inside the former Bethlehem Steel electrical repair shop. That building and the carpenter shop across the street are actually twins, built in 1913.
Beautiful.
And if you want to pan to the right, you'll see all of the church steeples for the various ethnicities that occupied the area.
It's definitely a melting pot.
Steel Corporation.
Totally a melting pot of, oh, nice moves. Oh yeah, there he goes. Totally, some nice moves there.
And beyond that is Lehigh University, founded by Asa Packer, who was really the brains behind the Lehigh Valley Railroad, which was the real reason Bethlehem Iron Company and therefore Bethlehem Steel located on the site. Because Lehigh Valley Railroad wanted to have a place to manufacture iron railroad rails without having to buy them from Scranton or the English. So they chose a junction right on their line with the North Penn Railroad coming up from Philadelphia for the Bethlehem Iron Company. Had a very similar board of directors, and they worked quite well together until they realized that Bethlehem Iron Company had to get out of the rail business to survive, and went into armaments business, and eventually got taken over by Charles Schwab, invested in the wide flange beam, which is what you build skyscrapers and bridges out of.
Right.
And that became the modern mega corporation we know today.
Very cool. That's all the South Mountain Formation. There's actually iron mines that serve some of the site here, which my theory has always been that even though it was poor quality iron that came out of there, the proximity to the processing was such that they might as well mine it, right? Because it's right here.
They got a lot of their iron from on the other side of the mountain. There are iron mines like at Bingen, where Saucon Valley Country Club is at today. There's actually an iron ore pit. A lot of it came in from New Jersey, from the Morris Canal, and of course later on by railroads. And by the time they shut down in 1995, those blast furnaces were being fed with iron from anywhere as far away, typically from Canada, but also during the corporation's operational period, they're getting stuff as far away from Africa and South America. And they had large iron mining interests in Cuba until nationalization occurred in the 1950s.
Okay. We're about right here, panning on, that's Iacocca Hall we're looking at, right? Which used to be corporate offices for Bethlehem Steel?
Offices for researchers and the actual research laboratory. So they had 1,000 researchers working up there in the 1960s. They had a miniature steel mill. The museum actually has many of the components of that. So they can make steel in batches ranging from 100 pounds up to 10 tons.
Wow. And
run it through rolling mills, coat it in a zinc coating line, do all sorts of tests on it. And then they had the lunchroom, and then you can still go up in there today. It's owned by Lincoln University now, the observation tower. Yeah, we did our March on Music Fest hike group shot from Iacocca Hall one year. A beautiful, beautiful scene. This is a fantastic skyline. There's, as you can understand, there's so much to interpret and see from right here, from just this spot. So Mr. Piersa, thank you so much for that dissertation, and everybody please go and visit Mr. Piersa over at the Museum of Industrial History, as stated over here behind us. Museum of Industrial History has all sorts of historic sites
that you can visit, the different flywheels and tools from so many different walks of life, dating back to the earlier colonial days of this area, all the way back to the end of the industrial age here in the Lehigh Valley. So thanks, Mike, for all of that again, and see you next time.